Welcome back, friend. Tonight we travel to Jerusalem, 586 BCE, the last night before Babylon breaks the gates. Centuries earlier at Sinai, thunder wrote law on stone. A shard from those first shattered tablets may still sleep beneath the city of David. At dawn, an illegal drill could crack that chamber, collapse tunnels, and turn holiness into spectacle. I am Snorelock Holmes, the dreaming detective, your steady guide through history's narrow passages. I follow every clue backward until the past itself speaks. Before we drift, tell me in the comments which city you're listening from tonight. Now breathe slowly. I will carry the edge while you rest. Chapter 1. Rain, a bead, and a deadline. Rain stitched the night into a soft grey curtain against my study windows. The lamp hummed low. On my desk lay a tray of ancient olive wood boxes waiting for their quiet inspection. Each box a small riddle of grain and hinge. Penelope, my old beagle, had curled herself into a comma before the hearth, sighing now and then as only a creature without worries can. I hummed a desert lullaby I learned years ago from a Bedouin guide, half melody, half memory, while I measured dovetails and catalogued carvings. For me, this is normal life, the gentle discipline of noticing, the olive oil sheen on wood that hasn't felt daylight in a century, the tiny echo in a lid that tells you there's a hidden catch where others see only ornament. Detective work, yes, but in miniature. It quiets the mind like good tea. Then the knocked urgent, but firm. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more. Rain spattered as I opened the door to a courier slick with weather. He offered a parcel wrapped in waxed linen, the string dark with water. On the red seal, pressed deep, was a small pomegranate, a delicate fruit shape I recognized from museum tags. For Mr. Holmes, he said, the vowels wobbled by cold. Urgent, hand to hand. Thank you, I replied, and set it on the blotter while Penelope snored on, unbothered by history. The seal was from Dr. Leora Ben Ami, the archivist epigrapher whose handwriting looks like careful stonework. Inside, an ivory bead the size of a hazelnut, carved as a pomegranate with a tiny hollow stem mouth. It was dusted with old beeswax that smelled, curiously, of juniper smoke. There was also a rubbing on thin paper, the kind you make from a faint inscription. Interlaced lines in a medieval Hebrew script, the ink brown and reluctant, and a hand-inked plan of tunnels beneath Jerusalem marked with a miniature pomegranate glyph near a bulb-shaped cistern. A note, scrawled in sleep-starved strokes. Victor drills at 5:12 a.m. Friday. I need proof. Or a miracle. Leora. Victor. That would be Victor Haroun, antiquities magnate, half charmer, half cobra. He was known for donations and for finding legal fog whenever the law turned solid. If he had a drill rig scheduled at dawn, something important and potentially fragile stood in its path. I glanced at the clock. 12 hours and change. I took the bead in hand. Ivory warms quickly, and this one carried a faint hum when I rolled it between my fingers, as if its hollow throat remembered breath. The calyx, little crown at a pomegranate's base, was scored by micro-scratches that aligned like a compass rose. No careless wear, intentional. I turned it so the longest scratch pointed north, and felt the tiny mouthpiece catch the lamp's draft. A whisper of a 2-tone murmur rose under my breath when I blew lightly across it. Not a whistle's sharp cry, but a vessel's sigh, low and paired, like 2 distant notes meeting under a bridge. Clever. I said to the empty room, and to the bead itself. Penelope thumped her tail without lifting her head. The rubbing from the Geniza margin. Geniza means a synagogue store for worn holy texts, spelled a rumour in the quiet hand of a 12th century scribe. He wrote of a sealed word from the first, and a fruit sign upon the stone where water has a voice. The fruit sign, pomegranate, matched the one carved on the bead. The phrase "the first" likely pointed not to the first temple as a building, but to the first tablets, the ones Moses shattered in rage when the golden calf danced beneath Sinai. Water has a voice. In Jerusalem, water speaks through stone. The city's ancient lifeline runs in tunnels and channels. Hezekiah's tunnel, the Siloam pool, the narrow arteries beneath the city of David where echoes turn cool and intelligent. If you know where to stand, a whisper can sound like a horn. And if a guardian wanted a seal that responded to the right person at the right time, a sound lock would be a simple, silent genius. I lifted the tunnel sketch to the lamp. Leora had annotated a side branch off the Siloam system, ending in a bulb-shaped cistern. Beside it, a tiny pomegranate. It wasn't a scribble. This was a deliberate mark, perhaps one that had been added and recopied more than once. Paths shift over centuries. Signs endure when they are simple and stubborn. The ivory bead smelled again of juniper beeswax. Someone sealed it once for travel or ceremony. Beeswax is a preserver, soft but loyal. Juniper smoke is antiseptic and used in old ritual spaces to cleanse the air. The two together told me this bead wasn't an ornament from a necklace, it was part of a tool. Someone centuries ago warmed wax between fingers, pressed it into this mouthpiece, and protected a sound. Who hid the shard? I murmured. And where did they leave the key? The room held its breath with me. In the distance the rain softened, the kind that polishes streets and rinses roofs clean. My lamp made a polite halo against the window glass. Leora's note spoke of a drill at dawn. If Victor drove a core through a sealed chamber, the pressure change alone could compromise an ancient container. Some vaults are tiny ecosystems, low oxygen, fragile humidity, delicate salts. Change the air too fast, and an ink that slept for 2,500 years can powder in a blink. Tunnels are selfish with their balance, and they punish arrogance with collapse. I turned the bead again. The two-tone hum steadied when I angled it just so. That felt less like music and more like combination work. Angled, find the frequency, hold it, use the tunnel itself as a lock. I stacked the bead, the rubbing, and the map on the tray, placed a blotter over them like a small blanket, and stood. No panic. Panic is a blunt instrument. We required precision. "Come, girl," I said softly to Penelope. She didn't come. She issued a luxuriant snore that told me the world would hold. I smiled, despite the stakes. I telephoned the tea room near the museum and asked for a quiet corner by the brazier. "For two, in an hour," I said. "And if you have it, that cinnamon bark that makes a tired scholar think of home." Then I wrote a short reply to Leora. Bring the donor's rumour, the subcontractor's name, and any scent of where the leak began. I'll bring breath. The rain put a sheen on the city as I stepped out. The night tasted clean and metallic, like a key newly cut. As I walked, the bead in my pocket felt less like an object and more like a promise that stone could speak if one asked in the right tone. Chapter 2. in which we trace a sealed word where water sings. The tea room near the museum wore the rain like a shawl. Coats steamed by the brazier, a kettle sighed. I found our corner, set the bead on the saucer and watched the door. Dr. Leora Ben-Ami entered soon after, raincoat sleeves dark and shining, curls pinned back, eyes precise even when tired. Her silver mezuzah pendant tapped gently against the blouse as she slid into the chair opposite mine. "I'm sorry to pull you in like this," she said, voice low and contained. "I tried the legal route. We filed an injunction. Victor's people produced a letter saying it's a maintenance drill. It's not. A donor leaked a plan of the older channel. Victor bribed a subcontractor who runs a cora the size of a lamppost. They want the chamber on Friday before the press cycle warms." "Then they don't know what they're approaching," I said. "Or they do and think arrogance breaks locks as easily as stone." She managed a tight, wry half-smile. "Arrogance has excellent funding. The Geniza rubbing is the closest thing to a smoking gun, but it's a whisper in a margin. If I stand before a judge with whispers and pomegranates, I lose. If I stand before Victor with something that hums from below the street, I may win." I pushed the saucer to her. The bead glowed softly against porcelain. "You sent this?" "Yes. From a collection marked as miscellany pomegranate." It wasn't. I recognized the juniper wax scent. There's a note in a 1927 accession log about it producing two close tones like a mourning dove. I thought of the Geniza line, a fruit sign upon the stone where water has a voice. Then I thought of you. We looked at the rubbing together. A 12th century hand had copied a rumour, nothing more, but it was the kind of rumour that lives because it holds a shape that fits many hands. The scribe wrote, "From the first, a sealed word sleeps. Its guardians set a fruit upon the stone where water has a voice. A tone is oath, 3 short, a hush, then 1. Wrong hands bring lime and milk, and the word is as smoke." I traced the letters with a fingertip, not touching the ink. From the first tablets given to Moses at Sinai. Those tablets were shattered. Tradition holds that Moses later brought down a second set, inscribed again. The ark held the covenant. But some whispered, even in medieval times, that a shard from the first set, bearing a near whole line, was concealed apart as a lesson and a warning. Net for display, not aught for possession, for witness. Leora nodded. The line, according to a later gloss, was from the commandment against false witness. It fits. What more apt line to keep sequestered than the one that guards truth itself? For our listeners, I said gently, because I always carry my listeners even through rain and braziers, here is the ark. The Hebrews were under Pharaoh's hand in Egypt. Moses, raised in the court, returns as a reluctant liberator. 10 plagues break Pharaoh's grip. A sea opens, they cross, an army drowns. In the wilderness, manna falls like dew. Then they reach Sinai, and the mountain burns with thunder and trumpet. God speaks the core law, 10 commandments etched on stone. The people, terrified and alive, agree. Then the calf of gold shatters the moment. Moses comes down, sees the dancing, and breaks the tablets as the covenant is broken. Judgment, mercy, a second set written. Those go into the ark. Centuries pass, kings rise and fall, and finally Babylon comes, 586 BCE. The siege. The temple burns, but some things may have slipped beneath fire. Leora watched me, with that look good scholars share, respect for story, clarity about evidence. "So you understand the stakes," she said softly. "If Victor pierces a chamber tuned for sound and time, the pressure drop can kill what it was made to protect, or worse, force the failsafe." "Failsafe?" I asked. She tapped the rubbing. "Lime and milk. Ancient way to say quicklime slaked by water. Caustic. If a thin vessel of quicklime breaks into water and the two mix over a text ink or soft etching, it bleach and burns. Some traditions had guardians set a small ampulla, a little bottle, that would tip if the stone is forced or the wrong tone is made. It's not a trap to harm a human. It's a shield to keep a holy thing from becoming loot. I breathed across the bead again, lightly. The two-tone murmur rose. She closed her eyes for a second, listening not to music, but to math. "The micro scratches," I said, "around the calyx. They align with a compass. Someone used this bead as both instrument and orientation tool. The juniper beeswax inside means it was sealed until the right hands arrived, and when you blow across it, the shape produces a stable double tone, a tunable key, not a whistle." Leora slid the tunnel sketch toward me. "Here's where the donor's leak points, a side branch off the Siloam conduit. It ends in a bulb-shaped cistern, likely older than Hezekiah. The air there would be cool and still. Where water has a voice could be literal. Cistern hums when you sing the right pitch." "And the pomegranate glyph here," I added, tapping the tiny fruit she'd marked. "It's not decoration in your copy. It's a signpost. The Guardians used something everyone knew. A pomegranate. Symbol of the priestly robe's hem. Many seeds. Life. But here the fruit's calyx points the way like an arrow." She exhaled. Some held tension leaving her shoulders. "I was hoping you'd see the same structure I do. Structure is what keeps us warm at night," I said, half smiling. "Now, the stakes. If Victor drills, he risks cracking a tuned chamber. If the ampulla is real and still perched, wrong force or tone could erase the very thing that makes the chamber sacred. If he succeeds without destroying it, he lights a media fuse. Counterfeiters emerge. The story tears away from prudence. We don't need a spectacle. We need a way to prove presence without touch." She nodded. "I called the Antiquities Authority. They are slow until it's loud. I need to make it loud without giving away the location, hence you. Your method." My hands are steady in these moments. "I will go down another way," I said, and didn't explain the steps because steps feel heavy when you are tired. "I will listen where I cannot yet walk. If I find proof that the chamber answers to sound, we can make Victor's drill look like a fool before he even turns it on." Leora's eyes softened. "There is another thing. If you do reach whatever you reach, do not read the line aloud. The Geniza scribe warned against it, and I feel that warning in my bones. It's one thing to know that truth resists false witness. It's another to pronounce a line the world might use as a weapon." "Understood," I said. "My job is it to own it. It is to help it sleep safely." Finished our tea. She left me with the bead, the rubbing, the sketch, and her trust laid carefully between them like a folded scarf. Rain guttered to a fine mist. The brazier ticked as embers adjusted to their own small gravity. On my walk home, I mapped the problem in plain pieces. We have a modern antagonist, Victor Haroun, funded and on a clock. We have an ancient antagonist, Captain Nabu kasir, whose men searched the tunnels long ago. We have a witness across time, a Levite scribe mason, if the documents are right, who knew how to set stones against panic. We have a key with a fruit's face and a voice like two notes meeting. And we have a sealed word that some believe can reorder the way people speak of law and truth. Life and collapse, both on the table. I reached my door. Penelope greeted me with a thump of tail that approved of any plan involving hearths. On the desk, the lamp still held its round, patient light. It was time to leave through the only door panic cannot find. Sleep with purpose. Chapter 3. The pipe, the smoke, and the stone that remembers. Acceptance comes quietly. I turned down the lamps until the room felt like a chapel. I locked the door, not for fear, but to give my ritual its boundary. Penelope climbed, with more hope than grace, into the armchair's footwell, and sighed the way desert wind sighs when it clears a hill and finds a valley ready. I set my pipe beside its small caddy and measured what I always measure. A twist of good tobacco for grounding, a pinch of poppy for memory, a touch of valerian root to steady the bridge between thoughts, the dust of lightning moss to coax the mind's gears to turn backward, and a minuscule breath of nightshade and datura leaf, one leaf's edge only, enough to tilt the room without letting it spin. I tamped the bowl gently, the way you pat old paper to sleep. The ivory bead lay in my palm like a moonseed. I threaded it on linen and looped it around my wrist, so its weight could remind me where the door might be. I settled back, spine long, feet planted, ribs free to move. 3 breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. The rain ticked softer, as if the city itself were listening. I began the descent the way my teacher in the mountains taught me. Slow the breath until each thought has enough room to finish its sentence. Picture every surface in the room, not with eyes but with inference. The desk, the lamp, the old boxes, the curl of Penelope's ear. Then extend past the walls and see the street, the rain, the stones beneath the street, the air in the stones, the water's path through them, the way sound bends around a corner in the dark. Logic first. Then loosen the grip a little and allow feeling to inform the map, not as poetry, but as probability. I lit the pipe. The first pull walked a line down my spine, like a gloved hand, smoke unfurled and settled. I breathed across the bead once, gently. The double tone answered and held like a hand at the small of my back, guiding but not pushing. The light fades, I said softly, because naming the moment helps it keep its shape. Every effect whispers at its cause. Every cause hints at its origin. I follow the trail backward until air itself remembers. The room's edges softened. The pipe's glow narrowed to a torch flare. The chair stretched long and flat. Tweed turned to rough linen. Ink to damp limestone. Rain became a distant, hollow drip echoing in stone. My hand on the armrest felt water's chill rising. Some call this tide travel. I call it disciplined regression, and the collective memory doing what it was designed to do. Hold what we cannot. Alone, contain. I arrived, not with a jolt, but with a weight. Thigh deep in a narrow channel, I stood with my back to a wall of cold limestone veined with trickles. The air was copper and smoke and wet. A muted roar thrummed above me, steady siege beat of rams against timbered gates. The city of David breathed like a body in pain, heat pulsing through its wounds. Somewhere, a child cried. Somewhere nearer, a man laughed, because men laugh, even when the world ends. My torch threw a small, serious circle of light. Water slid past my boots, not fast, but purposeful. The kind of current that tells you an underground river never forgot where it is supposed to go. The sides of the channel bore chisel marks, clothes even, work done by hands that trusted stone to behave. At knee height, the wall had a faint abrasion where 1,000 cautious touches had pressed, and beside that, the shallow ghost of a fruit carved small. I listened. A distant bobbing of other torches in a lateral passage marked a search party. Voices in Akkadian and the guttural Chaldean of Babylonian soldiers drifted like smoke through the rock. A captain's voice curled off the stone impatient, clipped. That would be Nabu Kasir, a tunnel commander with a job and not enough time. He would use spears to test for hollows, pry bars to loosen false faces, and men with thirsty pockets to carry rumor. I laid my palm against the wall, where the water's murmur grew lower. The stone was cool, but it held a soft hum under it, as if a jar beneath my hand were singing to itself. The bead on my wrist caught my torchlight and flashed once like a small eye. I lifted it, blew across the mouthpiece lightly. The two-tone met the tunnel's voice like old friends. 3 short notes, a pause, 1 long sigh. The water answered due faintly. I might have missed it if I were not built to listen. There is danger here, yes. Soldiers who would put a spear through a stranger without asking which god he serves. Tunnels that can decide you are unworthy of their breath. But panic is a poor tool for a detective. I took a breath and shifted my weight until my boots found the channel's firm footing. Far off, above and behind the stone, I imagined Leora standing in a cool hallway, ticking through steps and ethics, deciding what makes a people honorable when faced with treasure and loss. Here below, in the city's throat, I had found the first answer I came to hear. The stones were tuned. The fruit sign on the plan was not legend, it was a system. If I followed it with care, I would find the guardian's work, and perhaps a young man with ink on his hands and lime dust on his sandals, ready to trust one more stranger in a night full of bad choices. I took a careful step forward. The torch painted the ceiling with weak gold. Water breathed softly around my knees. And somewhere ahead, past a turn low enough to demand a bowed head, a chamber held a sealed word from the first, waiting not to be owned, not to be read, but simply to survive dawn. I smiled despite the cold. History had called. I had answered in the only language both of us trust. Cause, effect, and a promise kept in stone. Chapter 4. Water with a Voice. I arrived mid-step, water hugging my shins, its chill pressing against wool and skin as if to test my resolve. The tunnel's limestone walls were slick and pale, breathing back the torch's soft orange as a living throat might glow when a singer hums. Above, muffled booms rolled like distant drums. Jerusalem, 586 BCE, under Babylon's siege. This was the city of David's underbelly, the capillaries of the Siloam system, carved so that a city could drink when armies waited and watched. Smoke in the air tasted faintly of copper and pitch, a detail that told me Babylonian pitch torches were near. I did not panic. Good detectives breathe and look. The current tugged at my calves, gentle but insistent, and I let my body angle with it as a boat does with wind. My free palm trailed the wall. Fingers measured tool marks like shallow ribs. The rock was old, but the scratches were crisp. Recent hands had searched here. A rattle of pebbles came from my right. Dust fell in a lazy veil from somewhere above. Through a low side slit, torchlight flickered, then steadied, then moved, dancing the way a human arm makes flames stutter when it gestures. Voices followed, a barked command in Akkadian, short-clipped syllables with a chew of gravel on the consonants. I did not need to know the exact words. The tone said move, search, obey. The enemy here was not one man, but a machine of men. "We will not keep the king waiting," another voice said, lower and thicker. That would be Captain Nabu kasir. Hard eyes in a bronze-scaled helmet. I pictured his stance from the sound alone, weight on the balls of his feet, impatience in the set of his jaw. I eased forward, slow, making no wave, a small thing in a long corridor. When your opponent owns numbers, your ally is the shape of the place. I stooped under a natural arch, and there, at knee height where the channel narrowed like a pinch in the stone, I saw the first sign I had come to find. A pomegranate, no larger than a thumbprint, chiseled into the limestone. Not decorative. Its calyx, the little crown at the fruit's top, was rendered as 6 short spokes, all at an angle that matched the water's tug. A compass, in miniature, cut by a steady hand. I let my fingers hover without touching. The groove bottoms were darkened, as if soot and oil had been rubbed in to keep the mark visible under flood or ash. Just to its left, a glint, faint as a fly's wing in summer, caught my eye. Gold, powdered to dust and pressed into mortar. Priestly work had brushed here once. Beside the fruit, 3 short soot lines ran horizontal, then ended in a clean space. Tally marks usually count, but in a place tuned to stone and echo, tallies can sing. 3 strokes, 3 notes. I felt the ivory bead in my pocket grow heavier by context alone. Boots sloshed into the lateral gallery behind me. A spear butt clicked against a wall, testing for hollows. The sound travelled clean along the channel, sharp at first, then blurred as it met a bell-shaped expansion somewhere ahead, a telling acoustic. Air, water, stone had their own concord. When I exhaled, the breath pooled in front of my lips, then drifted to the right. There was a larger space there, taking the current sound and softening it. I tilted my head, listening for the difference in echo length. A single strike gives you tie. Short echoes mean close walls. Long ones mean a chamber. I heard a stretched return to my right, sweeter by a fraction. That was the bulb-shaped cistern marked on Leora's sketch, one with the tiny fruit glyph. Our parchment whisper in this age of fire. Quiet, Nabu kasir snapped. The words swallowed the tunnel's murmur for a heartbeat. Then came the scrape of bronze greaves against stone. Another spear tapped a low lintel. In a tunnel, that sound is a lighthouse. It warns and guides both. I lowered myself deeper into the runnel, water kissing my thighs, breath steady. Rather than make haste, I made small choices. I shifted my footing to let my calves blur the ripple. I hid my wake in the tunnel's own sound. The calyx on the carved fruit pointed along the flow. I followed. The world above growled, but the world below hummed. When danger tries to shout, you listen finer. Past the mark, the ceiling dipped, forcing me to crouch, shoulders brushing cool stone. On the right-hand wall, a faint smear like smoke with fingerprints dragged through it sloped downward. Someone had steadied themselves there with soot-dark fingers, moving with urgency but care. Ink-stained men leave this kind of trace. There are many kinds of strength in a siege. The quiet ones align well with mine. A soldier coughed, the wet, irritated kind. Somewhere close, a torch sizzled as a drip found its way into a flame. Live torches hate live water. The short hiss made me smile. In this place, physics was my friend. The spear butts paused. I could almost feel the calculus behind the pause. If treasure is hidden, it will be behind a wall that sounds wrong. If a wall sounds wrong, strike harder. If you strike harder and the sound rings less honest, pry. At the next bend, the limestone swelled across my path like the shoulder of a sleeping giant. I ran my fingers along it and felt a seam too straight for natural fracture. The seam kicked left at shoulder height, then right at the hip, a lock pattern to distribute force. Clever. The sort of clever that the Levites had time to practice when kings fought and scribes built quiet things. Then I heard the captain again. Probe the split. Coins and scrolls first. We find wood, be careful. Fire makes smoke. Smoke brings breathers. He didn't need to say breathers meant hidden Jews. The way his men shifted told me they heard it. Their torches brightened, bouncing off a turn in the side gallery. I had seconds at most, but panic is a poor tool for a detective. I took a breath and let my weight lean into the stone where the seam made its small rightward kink. Something yielded. Not a full door, more like a shoulder-width slit that had been blocked by an angled stone. The shift was precise, like a good lock catching and then the last tooth letting go. The current at my knees wavered and then found a new line. Air moved, cool against my face breath from a secret lung. The slit opened just enough for a slim body to slip through. I am not slim, but I am efficient. I turned my shoulders, exhaled to make myself narrow, and eased into the dark, letting one hand guide me and the other protect my ribs from a corner. Behind me, the spear's scrape came again, right where my back had been. It sparkled along stone, then went still. I stopped, stilled my own blood, until my heart kept time with the drip. The scrape resumed, inquisitive, closer, and then a whisper touched my ear from the black space to my left, no louder than water over a lip. This way, quiet. Breathe when I breathe. I followed the whisper. The tunnel narrowed to a shoulder-width pocket. Through a cleft as fine as a book's leaf, a guarded glow pulsed like a heart sheltered by bone. My eyes adjusted. A lamp, a tiny one, muffled under a rounded shard of translucent stone for shade, threw warm light onto a face. Ink-stained fingers, a steady oval face with quiet, almond eyes, a linen tunic damp at the hem, a belt with a small leather satchel. Asher, son of Kohath, the witness I had hoped probability would offer. He held one finger to his lips, then to his throat, a sign. Speak softly, this chamber listen. The slit stone closed behind us as neatly as a tongue returns to the roof of a mouth. The world of spears remained on the far side. In here, the air cooled another degree, and the water's voice changed again, dropping in pitch as it moved under a low shelf of cut stone to our right. Somewhere nearby, a space waited with a hum in it. Good, Asher said, the word a breath. You found the fruit. You follow the water where it speaks. Then you live. He listened a long moment, head cocked. The scrape retired. The hiss of wet torch returned to normal. They will go around, he said. They always do when the wall sounds honest. Our stone has a true face. I nodded once. My hand found the ivory bead in my pocket and held it loose, as one holds a bird so it does not panic. The bead seemed to warm and then cool, as if recognizing its twin. We hid something, Asher said, and the gravity inside his whisper pressed at my chest. Something we guard with our names. You must see but not see, hear but not speak. Can you? I can, I answered, keeping my voice so low the syllables rode only the warmth of my breath. He gestured toward a block at the chamber's far side, angled like a keystone set askew. Behind that, he said, but you do not pull it. We never pull it, even now. We only listen, and if our companions outside try to pry, we let the stone do what it must. He didn't look pleased to say that. He looked like a man who had rehearsed grief and found it always too large for the lips. Show thee what is safe to see, I said. It is a simple sentence, and in places like this, it is the only ethical one. Asher exhaled, a soundless shaking that somehow steadied him. He dipped 2 fingers into the satchel, brought out a small reed tube with a fruit-shaped mouth and a plug of beeswax. The wax carried a clean, resinous scent, juniper, clear as mountain air. He pressed his lips to the fruit and let 3 soft notes roll out into the stone, each one small, content with its size, as if they'd been taught not to grow up too fast. Then he paused and gave a single, longer breath that thinned at the end. The chamber answered, and under Aurea die hill, but had an ear-like algamy with gaps, the line. With your ink win 9, your you go nothing, the Socarosy clear. The chamber answered, not loudly, not in words. A rounded hum swelled like a jar being stroked by a wet finger, then faded in a slow sigh. In that hum I heard the room's shape, felt the bulb that drank the sound and gave it back gentle. The hair on my forearms rose in recognition. Water had a voice, and so did this stone. They remembered each other. Asher looked at me with a question in his eyes. I nodded. The sequence lived in me now. 3 short. Pause. 1 long. The first scribe had cut the 3 soot strokes beside the fruit to teach a tired mind where to breathe. Asher knelt by the angled block and found a seam with the care a healer finds a pulse. He leaned his weight just enough and worked a small lever of wood that had been made to look like part of a natural crack. The stone gave only a finger's breadth, just wide enough that cooled air slid out and kissed our faces with a smell like dry ink and old bread. In that slice of space, my eyes found pale shapes, characters perching on a flat surface not quite stone, their lines crisp but softened by great time. I did not read. I only let the shapes brush my corneas and then pass. One almost whole line, a sentence that knew itself but refused to be said. Asher sealed the gap again until the seam was only shadow. His face in the half-light carried the weight of law and the nearness of loss. He cupped the reed in his hands as a mother cups an infant's heel. "We sealed with sound and oath," he whispered. "If wrong hands pry, if wrong mouths sing, it dies in lime, newt stolen, safeguarded." Outside, a soldier's voice rose and fell, and the scrape of a hook pulled at something wooden far away. The wall between their work and ours met that sound and absorbed it until it was only a friend at the edge of a dream. The carved fruit in the runnel had done its job. It had pointed me along the water's counsel and taught me to listen for 3 small notes. Clue by clue, the tunnel was telling me what we needed most, how to protect a word by choosing not to touch it at all. Chapter 5, in which we meet Asher and the singing stone. Asher, son of Kohath, watched me with the wary measure of a man who must weigh a stranger's soul in the time it takes a droplet to fall. He wore no sign of rank, no jewel, only ink stains ridge-lining his fingers, and a chisel at his belt told his story. In sieges, some carry spears, some carry syllables. I have always preferred the latter. "Your accent is strange," he said quietly in Hebrew. His vowels were older, rounder, his consonants like pebbles rolled smooth from a stream's patience. "You are not of here." "No," I said. "But I am of now, and I am of the ones who listen." I folded one thumb under, hand open to show I hid nothing. "I came because of a fruit very much like the one you hold, and because of a whisper left in a book by men who loved your oath. I did not say Geniza, Cairo, or century, in the dream or vision or regression. Take your pick. I bring only what each world can receive without breaking." He nodded once, as if the muscles that controlled that motion had been trained on sparing movements. "We are not many who know," he said, "fewer by the hour." He gestured to the angled block. "You saw." It was not a question. It was a burden shared. I kept my eyes soft. It is a way out of panic. I saw only that something precious lies under your care. A shard, bearing a line nearly whole. The hidden air touching my face had carried the memory of ink cut gently into stone, and the sense of a sentence that has learned to be quiet to survive. His mouth tightened and then eased. "A line that says, 'Not to lie,'" he whispered. "Of all the words, that one seems most endangered when men quarrel over gods." It had to live. Even if all else burned, this one sentence must not learn the taste of ash. He leaned back on his heels and brought the reed tube into the lamplight. The fruit-shaped mouth of it gleamed with wear. I could see micro-scratches around the calyx where thumbs had found the same place to hold for years. Beeswax ringed the bore, its scent steady, juniper's clean needle threading the damp air. "My father shaped this," Asher said, "and his father before him taught the scale. 3 little breaths, a long one. The stone drinks it and gives us peace. We hear the sound and know our oath is still in place, the seal unbroken, the ampulla perched." "The ampulla," I said, offering him a chance to name what mattered. He nodded, eyes flicking, worried, to the top of the angled block. A small jar, thin as an eggshell, he whispered. Above the cradle, a hair's breadth from balance, a line holds it. If an enemy moves the wrong stone first, or if they play the wrong sequence, a catch releases. The jar falls into the quicklime below. The lime meets water and becomes caustic milk. He swallowed. It drinks letters. It eats etching. The word vanishes into a cloud that will blind anyone who is cruel enough to try. This was guardianship that understood human appetite. Not a trap for people. A safeguard against possession. If you insist on owning, the thing will unmake itself before it lets you. The ethics were as clear as the engineering. Captain Nabu kasir, Asher said, as if using the name would bind the threat to a single human throat. He is patient, like a hawk that will not blink. He sends men into any hole the builders forgot. They test every wall for echo. They will test this one soon. On the other side of our bone-thin partition, the slap of wet leather against stone carried closer. A soldier shifted his torch to the left. The flame's glow leaked around the seam we had slid through. The air warmed by 1/2 degree, just enough to make sweat think about itself. We have held this tunnel a year, Asher whispered. First we moved water. Then we moved the rumor of water to hide what we did with sound. But the city's nights grow shorter. He looked at me as if I could lengthen them by will. Our teachers told us the ark was taken away before this, that the most sacred wood sleeps where no king can find it, that we only hold a single line the finger once wrote. His eyes flitted toward the stone, then back. A line is a small burden, and the greatest one. You did this work under oath, I said, who swore with you. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, and in his lids I saw the inner picture of faces lined up like pebbles on a shelf. Kohathites, Levites, men whose names the records will not keep because we did not want the records to be targets. He half smiled, a brief thing like an unplanned kindness. An oath sworn in a whisper teaches the ears more than the tongue. You are a scribe, I said, and a mason. He looked surprised that I had made that leap, and then nodded. These fingers love words, he said, flexing his stained hands. But loves are greedy. They took stone too. The reed tube rested on his thigh. I reached within my pocket and drew out the ivory pomegranate bead from my waking desk, string still tied loosely from Lior's satchel. It was not wise to let objects cross too much between worlds, but the dream respects intention. I turned it so that the lamplight touched its calyx. Asher's eyes widened, not with fear, but with kinship. It is the same mouth, he breathed, reverent. He leaned closer and sniffed without thinking, a scribe's old habit. When his nostrils caught the faint juniper trace, the relief that poured through his shoulders made him look younger for a second. Who taught you? He asked. And somewhere in that tone I heard the specific relief of not being the last. An archivist left me a whisper, I said. In another age, it carried here. He brought his reed and my bead together, gauging the bore with a craftsman's eyes. The dimensions matched. The scratches spoke the same thumb language. We give an extra one to our heirs, he said, in case one is broken. This one. He tilted his head. It came far. The tunnel beyond our small chamber creaked with heat from a torch held too close to damp rock. Someone cursed. Kind of low, practical curse that expects no lightning. The sound faded again. "They will circle," Asher murmured. "They will sound the big bell chamber and hear the echo and get excited. But the bell we made is gentle. It will not give them what they crave." "Describe the path," I said. "Not for me alone, for those who might one day need to protect what you have protected without touching it." He closed his eyes and began. "The water comes in from the northeast cut. It bends right, hugs a shelf low enough to skin an ankle if you are careless. 2 right turns, then a left where the rock once flaked, but the flake is gone. Your fingers will tell you by the rude texture. Then the low step you felt under your knee, then right again, shallow pool to the calf. Left at the place where the ceiling drops as if to kiss your crown. Then the arch, natural, nat cut. Past it is the room that answers." He recited it like a prayer carved into his soft palate. As he spoke, I built it into my head, not as a map, but as a sentence with a rhythm of its own. I have learned that the mind keeps place best when it can hum along. Asher saw my eyes go soft, that unfocused look of men who file things neatly just behind their skull. "You know the trick," he said, and for the first time his mouth showed teeth. A trace of pride when he recognized another craftsman. I nodded. "I'll borrow your commandments to help me file your corners. First, only. Then, no idols, a shape you don't grab. Then, no name spoken wrong, a sound you weigh. Then, rest, the shallow pool. Then, honor, the parents of stone and water. Then, no murder with pry bars. No adulteries with sacred things. No theft with drills. No false witness, your line. No coveting your neighbor's word." He listened as the litany clicked in. "It keeps the order from falling asleep and forgetting itself," I said. "It does," he answered softly. "You speak like a Levite who was born with a different beard." The joke landed and then left like a bird that does not wish to overstay. He held up the reed again. "There is more," he said. He took the plug of beeswax and pressed it briefly between his palms to warm it, then rolled it thinner and ringed the reed's mouth. "When the wax is right, the note is right. The wax is juniper because cedar sings too proud, tamarisk too sour, and pine too weak. Juniper is boggis." He shaped the word as if pleased by its fit. He blew the 3 soft notes and the 1 long again, and now, anticipating, I held the bead to my lips and matched his tone. The room gave back a double hum, the 2 instruments like twin jars tuned by the same potter. A small, clean concord, the sort that tells a man he can rest his weight a little more on his left foot without slipping. He nodded, satisfied, then lowered the reed. "You asked who swore with me," he said. "Tamar, son of Shaphan, Uri, son of Merari, my sister's husband Ezra, who never learned to sharpen a chisel without cutting a thumb, but could spin anything with words until even a soldier felt he had wasted his anger." He swallowed, and his eyes went wet, but did not spill. "Some are gone already. The oath feels heavier without their hands under it. The closer the Babylonians come, the more we trust the trap." I said nothing for a breath. The heart sometimes needs to sit with a name. "A trap that is for men," I said eventually, "but for hunger." He looked at me as if I had picked the right stone from a pile. Yes, he said simply, for hunger. Outside, someone found a hollow too eager to answer and shouted. The shout ricocheted. 3 more men came running. Asher leaned forward, ear to the seam, and the tendons in his neck went hard. They hear the bulb, he said. They think it is a jar. It is, in a way, but not for oil. We went still again. In the stillness, the water's murmur grew louder, as if rewarded for patience. The tunnel sighed as a lung does after a climb. Through stone, a soldier's laughter broke, then cut off quickly when a superior frowned. Footfalls slid away. The crisis for the minute passed. One of the gifts of calm is to watch danger rise and lower like a chest, and to keep your breath superimposed over it, steady. How long can you hold them off? I asked. As long as the tune holds and the stone behaves like stone, Asher said. As long as the oath does not crack in our mouths. Tonight, I thought, I would stand here alone for hours and talk to rock so it did not forget itself. Then I heard your breath that did not sound like a soldier's fear. I thought, perhaps God is generous with strangers. He looked away and then back. Or perhaps the world is stranger than my teachers thought. Both can be true, I said. He smiled, brief and grateful for the permission. He touched the seam again, just with 2 fingers. You did it try to pull, he said. Most men would. Most men feel better holding what they say they protect, I answered. But that is often the way things die. We let that sentence sit. On the far side of the angled block, the not quite still hum of a stone that had learned to respond to breath remained like a pillow's warmth after a head lifts. I knew then that my work here was less about finding and more about proof of unfinding, evidence of a presence that refuses to be touched. If I could carry that logic back through smoke and tea into Victor's bright morning, I might stop his drill without ever naming a door. Asher, I said, I will ask you for something that feels like carving your name into water. I know you are tired, but will you mark one more fruit? Not for me, for those who will come long after, who may need only a last turn when all else has shifted. He looked uncertain. Then he listened down the tunnel. Then he nodded. A culvert at the low place, the one that never quite dries. He shaped the thought in the air with his forefinger as if chisel and wall were already under his hand. There, small, true, with 3 strokes. 3 strokes, I said, for memory. He glanced toward the narrow seam. For mercy, he added, and in the lamplight that word wore no drama, only muscle. Chapter 6. Water rising, breath holding, and the fail-safe revealed. The searchers were fools. Nabu Kasir's men had tunneled in mud and smoke for months. They had learned a tunnel's tricks. I heard it in the way they moved next, no random poking, but a method. Scrape, knock, step back, listen, move water, listen again. The siege had trained them to search with patience. Patience is dangerous in a predator. The scrape returned to the seam's far side, this time lower, more deliberate. A pry bar iron on stone told he they had found an edge and wanted to see if it could be bullied. The bar's head made a small grating whisper, twice, then a 3rd time. Each time the sound slid along our block and fell away like a hand groping for purchase and losing it. Asher and I traded a glance. Then another sound flowed under the scrape. The tone of moving water had changed. The feeder, Asher breathed. They're diverting it. He was right. The pitch of the channel to our left deepened by a note, then rose as if a string had been tightened. The Babylonians were opening a small gate, and there are always small gates in the lateral cut to let more water pool in front of suspected hollows. Sometimes caches float, sometimes they bob. When they do, men cheers and pry bars grow bold. The current at my knees gained weight. It pressed the hairs on my legs flat and made my boots think of lifting. The lamp's veil trembled as the cooler air from the bulb-shaped space pulled a little harder under the block. They will hear the chamber sing when the water kisses the lip, Asher whispered. It is beautiful and dangerous. Beauty and danger often masquerade as each other. The bar slid again, nearer the top seam. A soldier grunted. The limestone muttered. A low, irritated rumble that told me the pry was at the wrong angle. Wrong angle can lead to the right disaster. I counted my breaths. 4 in, 6 out. If men outside forced a stone at the wrong point in the sequence, the fail-safe Asher had named would do what it was trained to do, break a small jar and free a chemical animal older than kings. We did not intend to touch or open, but we were now forced to consider what happens when someone else tries. Where is the line fixed? I asked softly. The one that holds the ampulla? Asher crouched by the top right corner of the angled block and tapped twice with his knuckle, soft. A string spun with hair and plant fibre, he whispered, coated with gum. The air in there is dry. It keeps. He traced a path in the air with his finger. It runs from a peg here, across the jar's neck, to a small latch here. The latch belongs to a catch under this face. If this face moves before the other one does, the latch releases and the string loosens and the jar falls. He shifted his hand a finger's width to the left. If a man listens to the stone and moves the lower face first and lifts, as we do when we check the breath, the catch does not release. It is the opposite of how a greedy hand would pull. It was a mechanic's ethic, coded into rock. A good result requires submission to order, not force. It warmed Dee in a bleak way to see this in a place at war. Humans can still write grace into stone when iron rattles above. The water in the lateral built pressure then surged. Its voice filled the small chamber, a deepening hum that made the angled block's face feel like the top of a drum under my palm. Through the seam we could hear a gasp, a quick chorus of surprise, then a laugh. "Hear it?" a man said. "A jar sings when it floats. I told you so." Asher pressed his back against the wall and motioned me down with a flat palm. We slid into the runnel until water rose to our collars, the cold pressing my coat to my chest with firm hands. He pinched his nose and took a breath, then mouthed a silent count. I matched him. On 3 we dipped fully, ears flooding with the tunnel's deep sing. Feet braced against stone, we held still, 2 shapes on the far side of a seam. The pry bar scraped, then wedged, then levered hard. The stone above us sighed in a tone I did not like. The human hand likes to pry from the top corner. It feels right. But the latch had been designed to punish what feels right to hunger. We did not breathe. Even in the dream, your lungs make their old schedules, and ours were due. I waited far longer than was comfortable. Black dots touched the edge of my vision like a painter flicking his brush against a canvas. Asher's eyes stayed steady above the waterline. He lifted one finger and then another. Wait, wait. The pry bar held. Then a voice cursed softly. A scuffle of boots. The bar was eased, then shifted lower, seeking an easier bite. Now, Asher mouthed, and we eased up for a slow, small breath through our noses, then down again, letting only thin bubbles escape, hiding even our breathing in the water's language. The pressure behind the stone faded by a finger's width. The men outside talked in clipped whispers. The tone was sober now, not triumphant. They sensed a trick, but did not know its grammar. We surfaced into the small air again. I wiped water from my lashes and listened with the whole side of my head. The men outside had fallen back on a different tactic, a long spear sliding into the narrow crack left by a careless stonemason a generation ago. The spear tip kissed the angled block near the upper seam. The echo turned dull as an apple wrapped in cloth. The soldier pulled back, satisfied that behind it lay something more than natural earth. "Captain," one voice called, a hollow, but not full. Light and water both. "Then don't de fools," Nabu kasir said, in a voice near enough that I could hear the metal end cap of his spear tap twice against stone. His patience was back, cold and persuasive. "If it is a jar, we take it whole. Do you want to breathe smoke that makes eyes weep for 2 weeks? Do not break, do not pry. Get the hook and pull this little face out down low first." Asher closed his eyes, and I saw the relief and terror at the same time. Relief that the captain had learned wisdom from other traps in other cities. Terror that his understanding might be correct enough to find the seam's one safe order. He whispered, "He will not pick exactly right, but he is close." The hook gritted against gravel. It found the wrong edge and scolded it. It found the right edge and hummed, pleased. The stone trembled as if told a secret it had heard before and disliked, but could not ignore. "How do we mislead him without making the jar drop?" I asked. Asher's fingers went to the reed on instinct. Music was his answer to fear. "We sing the wrong note," he said. "We confuse the room. We make it a shame to speak. If the chamber's hum falters, they will think this is it ajar. They will move on, or they will at least go slower." He lifted the reed, hands shaking, then stopped. He looked at me, eyes asking for permission to break his own ritual. He had taught me the melody to keep. Now we would have to use it in a way that would make his teachers frown from the other side of history. "Do it," I said. "We are outlying. We are being silent in a different key." Asher breathed across the reed and gave 3 notes that bent their ends downward, and then a long exhale that started true and then was pinched in the middle into something flat and unbrave. It was still music, but it apologized for itself. The stone, hearing a request made without its real name, answered with a puzzled murmur, that rounded hum of before, a false friend. On the far side of the seam, the soldiers murmured. One laughed, sharp, a crack in morale. "It is only a bowl that leaks," he said. "You hear that?" His overheated torch hissed on a drip, helping our case. Nabu kasir grunted. We are not paid for bowls, he said. We are paid for king's things. Move. There are other galleries. This one smells like old wax and water. I do not like it. His dislike carried the timbre of a man who had once coughed in a very bad cloud. The hook scraped again, lighter now, as if its owner had lost his taste for heroics. The pry bar went silent. Footfalls sloshed away, 1, 2, a squad's worth. The captain's spear end tapped out a code of retreat on the wall. 2 light, 1 heavy. The sound receded into the side gallery until it became only a ghost in the water's talk. We stayed where we were for a full count of 60 in our heads, then 2 counts more to be indecently safe. Only then did Asher let his head fall back against the wall. His throat worked hard and then relaxed. I like my heart, he said softly. I prefer when it remembers it belongs in its house. You bent the song, I said, and kept the line. He blew air out through his nose in a sound that might have become laughter had the world been less on fire. My teachers would make a face at me, he said, but then they would pat my head when they thought I could not see. We knelt together in shallow water. The lamp's veil made the chamber's light a sort of dusk. Asher lifted his hands to show me the tremor and then stilled them by pressing his palms to his knees. If they come again with a better hook, he said, steady, and choose the lower face first, we will have to let the jar fall. I looked at the seam where his fingers had just described the hairline string that kept the ampulla poised. I pictured Lime sitting in a cradle, waiting like an army that only fights one battle, then sleeps forever. Your oath, I said, was not to show your courage by fighting men. It was to show your resolve by letting a sentence live or die at the right hand. It is an odd kind of bravery, he answered, but I do not argue with elders whose beards could sweep the floor twice. He glanced toward the wall once more, listening with his bones. The soldiers were gone for now. He pulled his chisel from his belt. Its tip was clean from use on limestone and stained black where it had once corrected wet ink on a tablet. He touched it to his forehead the way some men touch the lintel entering a house. Then he shifted on his heels, set his shoulders, and looked to me for where to make the mark I had asked. Take me to the culvert, I said, the one that never dries. If your teachers banish you for carving while the world ends, I will stand by you among the banished. It was only half a joke. He smiled a tired man's real smile. My mother will forgive me, he said. Her son, after all. We slipped back through the slit, letting the angled stone tongue rise behind us into its roof. The water in the runnel had begun to calm as the Babylonians moved their experiment to some other unlucky wall. We moved with water and wall for cover, each step a whisper. At the low place, the culvert sounded like a throat that never stops singing to itself while it washes pots. A perfect spot for a hint that will outlast whimsies. Asher crouched and worked quickly, the way men carve in war. The fruit appeared on the culvert's face, small, true, its calyx angled where the air drew most. He added 3 short strokes in soot, clean and evenly spaced. His hands did not shake at all now. It is a mercy of craft that sometimes only the work can stabilize the man. He leaned back and blew across his reed, not to sing now, but to test the stone's temper. The culvert gave a faint approval and kept on speaking in water. He nodded once. "A child who knows how to listen will find this," he said, his voice soft with something like hope. Above us, a beam groaned, singing the weight of too many years and too much heat. Dust fell. For a second we tasted ash that had not yet been born. I put my hand to the wall and felt the city's heartbeat coming down into stone. This is how cities die, with the feel of someone walking above who does not know your name. Asher touched my sleeve, then both of his open hands to his chest, a gesture of sharing. "You should go," he said simply. "You carry this somewhere else. I will stay and make the fruit here and there. And if the captain comes back with a hook that knows more, we let the jar go. A sentence is worth men burned blind because we were proud." "Agreed," I said. "You are a better guard than any wall because you know when to step aside." He looked embarrassed and pleased at the same time. Then he gave me the reed for a moment and nodded at my bead. "Play it together," he said. "Let the stone remember two mouths, in case the world asks it to choose again someday." We set the reed and bead side by side and blew the true sequence in tandem. 3 soft, kind notes, and 1 long that did it try to be longer than it was. The culvert didn't care, but the chamber beyond our slit heard and answered faintly, as if acknowledging a head bowed in another room. We listened to that answering hum fade. It did not falter, it did not bend, it went into the stone like a good promise. Then we rose and moved back toward the angled block by instinct now, not by counting steps, and paused only once to let a rat pass, its wet fur cold against my calf like a question. "Go," Asher said again at the slit's mouth. His eyes were steadier than mine. "And when you leave, take the breath with you." "I will," I said. Chapter 7. The Ledger of Clues and the Soft Logic of Stone. We withdrew to a small alcove I had marked with my peripheral vision when I arrived. A dry niche shoulder-high above the runnel, a pocket carved by water and completed by a tool. Here the air did not flow as much. Here a flame would have the patience to keep its line. Asher tucked the veiled lamp into the hollow and sat with his back to one wall, knees drawn up, hands loosely resting on the tops of his shins. I mirrored him. The position speaks to the nervous system in a voice it understands. Close, contained, protected at the flank. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to let my mind palace lay out the inventory. I walk the shelves. I touch each item, and I listen for the click when one knuckle meets another. Clue 1. The chiseled pomegranate at knee height in the runnel. Its calyx aligned to the water's flow, not to decorate, but to direct. The black rubbed into its grooves was soot and oil, a way to make the cut survive flood and ash. Beside it, 3 short soot strokes. In a tunnel where words cannot be shouted, tallies become songs. 3 strokes equaled 3 notes. A mnemonic left by a craftsman for himself or a brother so tired he would almost forget which way his thumb faced. Clue 2. A fleck of gold in mortar near the mark. Gold in a tunnel is an announcement. It says that someone who worked in the temple moved here with sacred materials dusting his robe, or that gilded fittings brushed past these stones when men who carry oaths also carried tools. It said priestly hands on a wet day, not soldiers on a dry one. Clue 3. The reed, with its fruit-shaped mouth, and the beeswax with juniper scent. The wax film leaves a residue that holds shape and tone. Juniper balances the note. Cedar overpowers. Tamarisk grows bitter in damp. Someone had tested woods and tastes until the room sang true and repeated itself when asked. Clue 4. The angled block with its wrong first, right second design. The line that holds the ampulla strings across the top seam to a catch on the lower face. If the greedy hand lifts the upper edge first, the string slackens, the jar falls, lime meets water, letters die, air turns caustic. If the careful hand frees the lower seam first, letting the stone breathe in a proper order, the latch keeps and the ampulla waits. A mechanism shaped like ethics. Clue 5. The hum itself, the chamber tuned like a vessel. The bulb-shaped cistern ahead, whose rounded geometry gathers a breath and gives it back as a low, warm note. It is ajar, but it is ajar in a way. A jar for sound, a way to test a truth without touching it. Clue 6. The root Asher recited with the ease of repeated devotion. 2 rights. A left, the low step. Right again, shallow pool. Left where the ceiling drops low, past the natural arch. Then the room that answers. A sentence etched not in ink, but in knees and ankles. Outside the niche, the tunnel whispered in water and far boots. In the alcove, the flame kept its line, and my brain did what it does, laid logic over noise like a blanket. Because the calyx points with the water, those who placed the marks wanted the tired to trust the current's counsel. Therefore, this system of fruit signs was not for a one-time heist, but for a generational maintenance of a promise. Because the 3 soot strokes sit beside the fruit, the way numbers sit beside headings, they are not counting stones, they are a breath count. Therefore, the same hands that cut the fruit also cut melody into the root. Because my bead matches Asher's reed in bore and wear, the acoustic key existed in both corridors of time. Therefore, the Geniza scribe's sealed word and fruit sign upon the stone where water has a voice referred to this very mechanism. Because gold dust clung near the sign, priestly bodies moved along this line, not just scribes alone, and this was not a private theft, but a community oath. Because the ampulla's line punishes the top first pry, the system was built to outlive conquests and show its worth by refusing to tear prize. Therefore, any modern attempt to penetrate the space with force, or even with a confident but incorrect tone, would nullify the very thing it sought, turning a relic to mist and outrage to ash. I summarized to Asher, short and plain. You marked a path with fruit and taught it to sing. The reed makes 3 soft notes and 1 long, that the room remembers. The angled stone listens for the order of kind hands. If an enemy tries to pry up first, he cuts the string and drops a jar that makes milk from lime and tears ink from stone. Because of this, the right thing to do in my time is to not break, to prove presence without touching, to sing it true under a controlled ear and then leave it breathing. He breathed out and in again. Yes, he said. Say it less beautifully to anyone who wears a ring and thinks it makes him wise. He caught himself and smiled. I said something rude about a priest once. I have apologized in my head every day since. Priests and magnates are cousins, I said. They pick up the same toys when no one is watching. But both can be convinced by scandal. He cocked his head. Scandal. In my world, I explained, if a man drills and kills a treasure, he is not praised. He is pulled before crowds who like to be angry. He loses coin, friends, sleep. I tap the wall with one knuckle. If I can show him a way to not be shamed and still be first to hear the chamber hum under sanctioned ears, he will stop. He absorbed this, eyes narrowed in thought. You ask me, a scribe of tunnels, to have faith in men I have not met. I ask you to have faith in leverage, I said. It is the same principle you use in your stone. He accepted that, but then lifted one finger. There is a thing I have not told, he said. Not because I distrusted you, because we had been busy not drowning. He leaned closer. The letters on the lid. You saw enough to know what they were, but you should know they are not carved into the stone. They are inked and incised both. The incision is shallow. The ink dark fills it. Time softened the edge. If lime falls, the template goes with the die. Nothing will be left to recut from. So the failsafe, I said, is absolute. He considered. Absolute is a proud word. But yes, it is proud here. He looked briefly ashamed and then shrugged off the feeling. We baked the small clay jar thin so it will shatter on a breath. We placed it in a cradle so it could rock, even when air moves a little, even when feet shift on the floor above. The latch to release it responds more to impatience than to malice. Then, the right plan is the conservative one, I said. We leave the jar asleep. We sing outside the seam. We let the world imagine softly what lies within, and we let that be enough. I indexed the plan in my head with an image that would be hard to shake. A fruit outline, calyx pointed along a current, and 3 soot dashes like short bars of arrest. The lamplight pressed into the stone's soft pores, as if it, too, were agreeing to remember. Tell me about the sentence, I said, careful. Not the words, the shape. Asher smiled wryly. You are as bad as a curious apprentice who does not want to be whipped. He traced a line in the air with his finger. It is almost whole, he said. Its start is crisp, its end is intact. The middle is a little gnawed by a chip in the parent stone before it shattered, but any child of a scribe could fill the nib-sized gap and be right. He lowered his hand. What it says, you have guessed by now. We keep it because telling truth in the face of 2 armies is holier than almost anything. Truth concerning, I said softly. Spice witness as wrath. He nodded solemnly. Yes. His eyes drifted to the angled block again. And here we are, you and I, lying to men outside by singing wrong. And it is right. He shook his head. Life is heavy and strange. Lying to those who would destroy to possess is a form of telling the truth to the thing that must live, I said. My craft lives in that tension. I am a detective. I tell stories to make other people stop telling the wrong ones. In the distance, a low rhythmic thudding began. Siege above doing its animal work against the city walls. Every thump came late as a lazy heartbeat, the city's ribcage absorbing a loverless embrace. In our alcove, we listened until the sound became part of the weather and no longer an alarm. Now, I said, the mini recap. I smiled to take the sting out of a teacher's habit. You and your circle hid a shard of Sinai's first stone that still carries a nearly complete line against false witness. You built a coffer whose inner system destroys its own contents if greed strikes wrong. You left fruit marks to guide only those who listen, and a reed to sing a check phrase. You intended that no king would ever boast of what his hand touched. If he tried, a white milk would drown his boast. And you, Asher added, intend to stop a man whose greed wears a newer coat by make shame more expensive to him than patience, and by offering him a prettier hearing of his own future if he stops now. Correct, I said. And to do that, I need the music and the map in the simplest form, and I need to carry a mark back that is indisputable but not exploitable. Proof that does not point a finger at the lock. Asher considered, eyes narrowing in the practiced way of a man who phrases oaths for men who like to argue. Your bead, he said, nodding toward it in my palm. It is proof by kinship. In another world, a twin to our reed exists. Its wear and wax speak like brothers finished by the same father. If this twin sings our room in the right way, then your captain, your magnate, must listen. But you must not sing the exact true pitch into a device that steals sounds. Make yours a step lower. Enough for the stone to answer, but not enough for imitators to cut a lock. I nodded. I will aim wrong on purpose, just wrong enough. And if he asks you the path, he made a small noise, part despair, part amusement. He will. I will tell him the shape of a virtue instead, I said. That echo surveys exist. That resonance mapping can prove a chamber's size and tune. That if he waits under watch and ears, he may be the first to hear hum without ever seeing a letter. I will promise him primacy of listening and show him paperwork heavy enough to make disobedience feel tired. His face brightened fractionally at my last sentence. Scribes love burdens that make thugs yawn. A good scroll defeats a good spear, he said. Often. Enough, I said, rising into a slow crouch. Time. My knees ticked back to the present. The water tugged with that familiar pull. The air carried a hint of smoke that wanted to grow. I looked Asher in the eyes, steady. One last request. If you reach old age, teach a child to put a fruit where water speaks. Even if wars shuffle stones, even if no one remembers why, so that centuries from now, a tired soul might still find the place where the world hums gentle instead of loud. He nodded, his mouth set. I will bear that seed. He stood, rolling his shoulders back. And you will bear the music. We will both bear what we can, I said. Chapter 8. A plan made of restraint. We returned to the angled block one last time, not to open, to listen as men take turns keeping watch during a long night, trading the right to blink. Asher cupped the reed. I lifted the bead. We did not blow this time. We touched our instruments to the stone, mouthpieces cool against the seam, as if we were reminding a sleeping child that his parents still sat awake by the bed. Right, Asher whispered, pointing with his chin toward the outflow. I glanced and saw a pale thread of ash creeping along the runnel, a ghost of fresh fire above meeting old water below. The air tasted sharper. The Babylonians were burning something larger now, beams, doors, dreams. The room's breath seemed to deepen in answer, the way a body takes longer inhales under a heavy quilt. "I will go up," I said. "You will keep your circle tight. If they return with a cleverer hook, you let the ampulla." He did not flinch when I said it this time. The first time had cost him a penny. This time it cost him a halfpenny less. "Our hands will not become instruments of greed," he said, "even to feel strong." He sat back on his heels, like a man who has laid out tools on a cloth and now knows which one he will use. We rehearsed the modern plan once more, because muscle likes second tries. I spoke it in the simplest phrases, ears attuned to the world beyond our slit. 1. Do not reveal the exact chamber. 2. Do not reveal the exact pitch. 3. Demonstrate the principle. 4. Offer a way to listen without cutting. 5. Bring witnesses with authority. 6. Make the choice to drill look like the choice to run naked in winter. No one runs naked in winter if give a coat and an audience. "I would like to carve a thing," Asher said suddenly, the words arriving in a rush, as if they had waited too long in a line. "Before you go." He fished in his satchel and drew out a thin flake of limestone, the size of a man's palm, smoothed by thumb's work over months of waiting. He held it as if weighing its fate. "A wordless fruit," he said, already pulling his chisel free. "A sign that is it a map to a lock, but a map to a thought." He set the flake between his knees, tip of chisel just kissing its surface. The tap-tap he used was gentle, a language between metal and stone. He carved the small round belly of the fruit and then the 6 small spikes of the calyx. He rubbed soot into the grooves with his thumb. Then, beside the fruit, he made the 3 short strokes, aligned and even. He lifted it to the lamplight. It was plain and good, a thing a child could understand without a teacher, if the child had ever watched water and listened to the jar's hum. "Take this," he said, "not the reed, not the map, just this small thing your men will call primitive. It will look like a trinket. But when you tell your story, hold it in your hand. It will make your breath settle. It will remind you where the calyx points." I took the flake. It was cool and heavier than it looked. It fit in my palm with the authority of a coin pressed there by a father. "I will keep it with the bead," I said. "They will be cousins." We stood. The act felt large, and it was not just height. Standing in a tunnel shifts one's right to be present. It tells the bones that going is now possible. Asher moved to the slit and set his hand on the stone's lip, his fingers finding their prints from an hour ago, working the old lever just enough. The seam opened as far as a thick book, not more. The runnel beyond breathed our faces with the same welcome and warning. He looked back and then forward. "When you return to your world," he said, "do not forget that we did not need to see to believe. We only needed to hear and decide." He paused, then added with the humility his teachers had carved into his collarbones, "We may be wrong about everything. Even then, let us be wrong in kindness." "If wrong in kindness," I repeated, fixing the phrase in the front of my skull. "It reads well beside the false witness line." He half laughed. A good pairing. Then he lowered himself into the runnel and slid through the slit, stepping into the flow as easily as a heron lifts its feet from a riverbed. I followed, shoulder first, then ribs, then the last sigh of a coat's hem. The stone settled back behind us with a small home sound. The corridor had the same shape and the same water, but felt different now, because plan replaces fear, the way warm bread replaces the taste of ash. We moved a short way and then stopped to listen. No men, not near. Only the long encouragement of a city's artery. Asher gestured to the right path of. I nodded and pointed left. Path back toward the culvert he had just marked. He understood. Two guardians walk different directions when danger is everywhere, so that neither brings trouble home. We did not embrace. That does not meet, we did not part close. Peace, he said, palm to chest. Truth, I answered, palm to mine. Then we turned away. I retraced the route in the order we had sung it, and in the order of my adapted commandments litany. Only no idols, no reaching hands, no name misused, tones not bragged. Rest, even while moving. Honor fathers, Kohath, by walking their tonality. Do no harm with a pry. Keep the marriage between stone and air unbroken. Steal nothing, not even a sound that is truly another time's. Bear no false witness about what you did not see, and covet nothing behind that stone beyond what sound gives you. Memory and ethic make friends quickly when danger wants to keep them apart. At the runnel where the fruit had first taught me to trust flow, I paused and touched the 3 soot strokes with one knuckle, the way a man might touch his grandmother's bead for luck when passing a threshold. The soot marked my skin. Proof is quiet. It is a black smear left by a craftsman 3 generations past that rides home under the nail of a detective 5 and some centuries hence. I smiled, despite myself, at the arithmetic of it. The sound of the siege above grew louder as I climbed toward the air. The tunnel's ceiling lowered once more to kiss my crown. I bowed and accepted the kiss. Then the stone lifted away. The slope rose and the air sharpened and widened, trading limestone's cool mouth for night wind's dry one. The last bend gave me moon like a flake of bone in a dark stew. Then an opening, square and honest, let me out. I stood in a shadowed laneway hugged to the slope above the Gihon walkway. A city exhaled smoke and history into the sky. A goat bleated with the indifference only goats master. The wind brought rosemary and fear. I checked my pockets. The ivory bead sat where it belonged. The flake with the fruit warmed under my palm now from my own heat. My hands smelled of wet stone and juniper wax. In my ear a hum kept singing on, not aggressively, just enough to say, "You did not imagine me." I made the last of my plan in this space, between a world and another. When I moved back into the present, I would find Victor at the service gate before dawn. I would stand in mist and in a tailored man's light. I would not come as a thief with coordinates. I would come as a man with a humming thought and a choice. I rehearsed the words that would do the work without drawing blood. Victor, I would say slow, 1 sentence at a time, so he could not cut any in half. You can be the first to hear the breath of a chamber that has slept since the year Nebuchadnezzar burned Jerusalem. Or you can break it and suffocate it and be the one who killed a line that has more gravity than your watch. I offer you a recorder and a tone that will almost wake the stone, but not enough to betray it. and I offer you the sound of shame if you drill into lime. Then, practicalities. Leora already had the Antiquities Authority on a short line. She had colleagues with badges and dull shoes who liked to stand next to rigs wearing clipboards like armor. I would make sure those shoes stood in this lane. I would stop the drill before its first bite, not by preaching, but by placing 4 choices on a table and making 3 of them nauseating. Above me, a roof beam somewhere surrendered. It announced the surrender with a prolonged crack, like bread splitting its crust to let steam out. A moth flew into my face, powder fragile, and then away. It broke a thought, and then repaired it just by being alive. I whispered thank you to the stone behind me that didn't care, and to the young man below with ink on his fingers who did. Then I walked a dozen soft steps up the lane, found a nook half-roofed by a crook of rock, and settled. It would be a short wait in their time, and a long one in mine, as I shifted gears from grotto to gate. I lifted the bead and placed it to my lips, not to sound, but to breathe through. Inhaling across the mouth of a vessel slows air and invites steadiness. It is a small thing, but a man who has to say sentences that weigh something benefits from small things. And then I let the tunnel's hum be my metronome. It held my pulse at a workable line. It reminded me that a detective's finest tool is his cleverness. It is his choice of how quiet to be when everyone else is loud. Soon, mist would draw lines on Victor's coat. Soon, blue lights would wash the lane. For now, water and stone conducted a long, low note through my bones. The city above me may have been ending in a dozen loud ways, but down here, Restraint had learned to sing. Chapter 9, in which a stone sings and a rig falls silent. Pre-dawn lay cool over Jerusalem, a soft grey steeped in mist that gathered along the old terraces of the city of David. I stood at a service gate above the Gihon walkway, hands steady in my coat pockets, the ivory pomegranate beads strung on linen resting against my palm. Down the steps, floodlights cast tidy cones of pale light onto stacked cases, coiled cables, and the compact silver body of a coring rig under a tarp. To our right, the slope fell toward the spring, that old heart that had kept this hill alive since before David's time. The air smelled faintly of wet limestone and cold metal. We were above the Gihon Spring in the city of David, Jerusalem. Dawn was set for 5:12 a.m. The world was quiet enough to hear a stray drip from the hillside. Victor Haroun arrived with careful steps, the camel overcoat sharp against the dawn. 2 contractors in hard hats kept loose at his flanks, moving like men paid not to ask questions. Victor's gloved hand rested at his belt, where a vintage pilot's watch ticked with professional self-assurance. He scanned the gate, then the tarp, then the dark beyond the floodlights. He had chosen a shortcut between legal approvals and sunrise. It would have worked on a lesser night. Leora stood near the gatepost, jacket zipped, eyes level. The little silver mezuzah at her throat caught a weak glint from a lamp and sent it back toward him as a pin of light. She had already called the Antiquities Authority. I could hear them out there in the city somewhere, a low murmur of radios, the far pulse of blue that travels slowly until it does it. I stepped from the shadows of the walkway. "Good morning, Mr. Haroun." My voice carried calmly in the mist. "You are on time. That is a professional kindness." Victor's mouth made a courteous line that decided, for now, to be a smile. Mr. Holmes. I expected a lawyer. Instead, I find a legend and an eagle at home. He eyed my empty sleeve. And a very small case in your hand. A small case often holds a large hinge. I lifted the cloth pouch a finger's breadth. Before dawn, I will show you what your drill would not only risk, but guarantee. He shrugged, both skeptical and curious. Curiosity outranks bravado in the long run. It is why men like him get this far. He gestured, and one of his contractors peeled back the tarp from the corer. The rig gleamed, neat and hungry. Leora's breath made a pale ribbon in the cold. "Victor," she said, "I know you think you have a donor's blessing and a friendly permit somewhere in a drawer, but this is a sacred precinct. Press one button and your reputation will live here for the wrong reasons." Victor tipped his head. "Dr. Ben-Ami, I don't vandalize, I uncover. History belongs to those who care for it with means." He looked back at me. "Show me your hinge, Mr. Holmes." I set a compact field recorder on a flat stone near the gate, its red light a small star in the dim. From my inner pocket I drew a tuning fork and struck it against the edge of the stone. The fork sang a clean, steady note. I held it near my ear for a second, then let it quiet. Next, I unwrapped the ivory pomegranate bead and the linen cord and lifted the bead up at shoulder tight. Its surface was worn satin smooth by palms that had passed it down with care. Tiny scratches circled the calyx like a compass rose, and a faint juniper scent rose from the hollow, a ghost of beeswax that had sealed it a lifetime ago. 2 minutes, Victor said softly, almost as a test. "Less," I answered. We were standing over a side run of the Siloam system, the ancient waterworks. The tunnel beneath us widened into a bulb-shaped chamber not far into the rock, tuned not by chance, but by design. I had walked it in the dream. I felt its curve in my bones now, the way a violinist can hum the first note before the bow moves. I took one slow breath, the kind that starts in the heels and ends behind the eyes. Then I set the bead to my lips and blew across its mouth. The ivory took the air and returned 2 soft notes, a mild and a lower twin, a double tone that hovered like a held hand over a pool. I adjusted the angle by a breath's width until the beat between the tones stilled to a listening calm. Victor's face had patience in it, but his eyebrows had questions. The contractors exchanged a glance. Leora's shoulders dropped a fraction, that scarce space where belief and proof touch fingers across a gap. I played the sequence Asher had shown me under the city long ago and a night ago in sleep. 3 soft notes, 1, 2, 3, then a space the length of a heartbeat, then one long note that widened like a doorway. The bead made the tunnel answer. It answered from below with a low, living hum that swelled out of the rock as if the hill had a chest and was singing under us. The sound was not loud, but it was full. It filled the mist and slid along our bones. For an instant, the fog itself seemed to ripple. Victor's eyes sharpened. He took one slow step closer, head canted, listening like a hunter. The contractors didn't move. It was not the sort of sound men are accustomed to hearing from limestone. I lowered the bead and let silence settle. "That chamber is a vessel made to resonate when called the right way," I said, keeping my voice quiet and even. "It is sealed with sound as well as with stone. Inside is a stone coffer. In that coffer rests a shard from the first shattered tablets, bearing an almost complete line from the command against false witness." Victor's polite smile faltered. He did not nod. He did not need to. The air had done the nodding for him. "You plan to core into the wall of that vessel," I went on. "If you do, you will pierce a fail-safe the Guardians designed. It is simple chemistry, hidden as piety. Above the shard's cradle hangs a small ceramic ampulla. It is tied to a tension line. Forcing the front stone or sounding the wrong tone releases it. The ampulla will drop into quicklime and water under the shard. That makes caustic milk, strong enough to erase ink, etching, even the soft surfaces of age. In short, your drill does not unlock. It triggers a death switch." One of the contractors frowned. "He's guessing," he said to Victor. "Fail safes from 2,500 years ago?" 2,600 and change, I replied gently, not taking my eyes off Victor. I lifted the Geniza rubbing that Leora had entrusted to me from a waterproof folder and offered it to him. He didn't take it, so I angled it for him to see. The marginal note, 12 centuries old, spoke in a small hand of a word sealed by sound and fruit sign upon the stone where water has a voice. Victor read and did not read. He has people for reading, but he is a quick mind. He recognized the consistent pattern, not just the romance of an idea. He glanced toward the slope, tracing with his memory the side branch that ended in the bulb-shaped void on the plan he had bribed from a man who had not earned it. I raised the bead again and, with purpose, blew a mismatched note, sharp, wrong, impatient. The tunnel answered, but this time the hum staggered. Something inside the rock snubbed out like a candle in a crosswind. Even those who didn't believe believed for a second. The contractors both lifted their eyes at the same time toward the earth at our feet, like men who think briefly of fault lines and insurance. "Force or wrong tone equals obliteration," I said. "Not dramatic, certain." Victor let the silence draw long enough to choose how he would step down from arrogance without losing face. It is a talent that saves careers and piece by piece preserves cities. He exhaled once. "You are asking me to take it on faith, Mr. Holmes, that a piece of law from Sinai sleeps under my feet. You are asking me to delay work and lose a sunrise and the money it costs." "I am not asking for faith," I said. "I am offering you risk calculus. If you drill and the chamber had nothing, you win only noise. If you drill and it holds what I say, you destroy it and walk into a storm. If you wait, you lose hours and gain a reputation for restraint, and you may still witness proof without harm." Leora's voice came soft but exact. "Victor, we can map the harmonics first, non-invasive. Document resonance at the marked galleries. The authority will back this if a sponsor funds the survey. That sponsor can be you. You get your name on wisdom, not on rubble." Down the lane, blue lights feathered through the mist, very near now. Authority cars made that gentle hum that says we will come with pens before we come with cuffs. Footsteps on stone measured, not rushed. I watched them approach, but I did not change my tone. Your rig is handsome, I said to Victor. Use it another day in a place without a living switch. This hill is it a wall to conquer. It is a room that sings when asked and breaks what does not listen. Victor let the Geniza rubbing in my hand pull his gaze once more. He read the tiny note again, the way a man reads a price he already knows he will pay. Then he turned to his contractors, with that crisp economy of a fencer. "Cover the rig," he said. "We're done for now." One contractor hesitated by habit. The other set his jaw and obeyed. As the first blue jacket reached the gate, Victor reached into his coat and drew a folder. He wrote with a fine fountain pen, as if signing a check at a club. "Dr. Ben-Ami," he said, "I will fund a supervised resonance survey, non-destructive, with full cooperation of the Israel Antiquities Authority. We suspend all drilling pending their review. You will draft language that says so without calling me a villain?" Leora's lips softened into something close to a smile, small but real. "I can draft language." Victor looked at me last. "You enjoy theatre, Mr. Holmes." "I enjoy truth spoken softly," I said. "It carries farther in stone." He tucked the signed memo into Leora's satchel himself, a gesture as calculated and as useful as any I have seen. Then he lifted his gloved hands in a small surrender to the blue uniforms. "Gentlemen," he said, "we're early and we're leaving." If he felt the sting of that, he did not show it. A man who lives by calculated pivots is hardest to embarrass, easiest to aim. The authorities officer listened to Leora's concise account. He glanced once at me, once at the bead on its cord. "Holmes," he said quietly. He had read a newspaper once. He nodded, as if we were both part of a much longer sentence. The mist began to thin over the slope. Morning gathered at the edges like a clean sheet being pulled tight. Somewhere in the valley a dove called. The Cora slept again under its tarp, patient and unused. The city breathed the soft breath that happens between night workers and first bakers. We were done by 5:06 a.m. The narrow margin between disaster and calm is often less than a page. Today it had been less than a song. Before we parted, I held out the bead in my palm to Leora. "I will return it to you when the paper is signed and the equipment is seen off site," I said. "A small superstition of mine." She nodded. "Keep it for now," she said. "It listens to you." She touched the bead with her forefinger and smiled that small, wry smile I had seen at the tea room when a clue clicked. "And thank you." Victor lifted 2 fingers to the brim of an imaginary hat, a salute to the inevitable, and walked into the thinning grey with the easy stride of a man who had shifted risk from red to amber. The low hum from the hill, no longer needed, faded back into the rock. It left a memory in the air, like incense after a service, or the taste of cold iron on the tongue after a storm. We had kept a sealed word asleep. That was the work. Chapter 10, in which silence keeps the word. The negotiations went like water down a familiar channel. Once the first bend is made, the rest follows its own grade. The authority took custody of the lane and the equipment. A simple protocol was agreed in front of the gate with the plainness of men who have too much paperwork to fancy their language. First, no drilling. Second, harmonic mapping only slow sweeps with a speaker and microphones, beginning at the galleries marked with fruit signs where water has a voice. Third, all results logged and sealed until a joint committee reviews them. Fourth, no public statements naming the chamber or its sequence. Fifth, if the chamber proves live, it sleeps again under law. Victor initialed each line with that tidy pen, neat, even in concession. He did not enjoy losing a sunrise. He did appreciate minimizing a headline. Leora promised him the language would show a donor's restraint, not a thief's retreat. She would publish the Geniza note and the ethics of leaving sleeping things at rest, omitting the tones and the path. Knowledge without the key. That is sometimes the most faithful record. I watched her speak to the officers with the calm that comes to people who have worried for too many nights and find at last a morning that does not break anything. She touched the silver mezuzah at her throat once, not a flourish, more like clearing dust from a step she was about to take. "We will document what we can," she said to me aside. "We will not touch what we must not. My students will understand the lesson better for the word we do not publish." "Abstention can be a loud verb," I said. She smiled at that, and then she was swept into the ring of work that forms around a decision. Clipboards, bright vests, the honest ballet of coordination. I am not needed in that dance. My work had moved from the underworld to ink. That is often the happiest path. By the time I climbed the steps away from the walkway, the city had made herself official. Shops rattled their shutters open. A bus sighed to a halt and hissed away again. A bakery somewhere had found its rhythm with dough. Dawn did not trumpet, it unrolled. I returned to my rooms as the rain slackened into a kind of mist that forgets to fall. The lamps were as I had left them, turned low to amber. Penelope the beagle blinked up at me from her cushion by the hearth with the slow dignity of an old queen. Her ears twitched once, as if she had been dreaming of long grass, then settled back like soft leaves. I sat in my armchair and let the back take my shape, the tweed creasing in the familiar place at my shoulder. On my blotter lay the waterproof folder, the tuning fork and the bead on its linen. I placed the bead on a square of cloth and tapped the fork again, just once, to hear its clean line like a ruler across a page. The bead did not answer. It did not need to. The hill had answered plenty for both of us. The rain outside softened into a private sound, a hush that suited wood and books, and the slow nature of an earned exhale. I lifted the bead closer to my nose and breathed in the faint line of juniper and old wax. I do not fool myself often with symbols, but sometimes a scent is not a symbol. It is a straight road back to the hands that held a thing through wars and winter and bargains and blessings. I closed my eyes and let that road run until it ended in torchlight and a young man named Asher, ink on his fingers, carving a fruit sign in rock while the water beside him counted out the seconds of a city's courage. When I opened them, there on the blotter, by the corner of the folder, lay a single flake of black soot I had not owned before the dream, light as an eyelash. I touched it with the back of a fingernail. It smudged true. That happens sometimes. World leaks a proof the way a hill leaks a hum. I do not force it to explain itself. I let my head tip back against the chair. The pipe rested cold on the table, its bowl holding the last sweet trace of poppy, datura, and that moss that grows where lightning forgot a rock. I did not need it now. The mathematics of memory had done what it came to do. The edge of danger had dulled into the soft of safety. Penelope gave a single contented snore, then shifted to tuck her nose under a paw, as if sealing a small secret against sleep. Good. Let the shard stay sealed too. Let the law live by not being handled. The low hum from the chamber, that living sound nested under stone, lingered in my ears like the last line of a lullaby you hum without choosing to. A sound made to keep people honest in a dark time had become, for this morning, the sound that kept a city quiet. In an age of overreach, we had chosen the rare thing to leave something untouched so that it could go on existing. That is as close to justice as some nights permit. I closed my eyes. The chair knew the rest. The room breathed, and I followed it. The wind down, the rain outside settled into a finer thread, a gentle lace that the air wore easily. The hearth kept a quiet orange, not crackling, only whispering in the way embers do when they are content to be themselves and not anyone's spectacle. The books along the wall held their lines like old friends who know the conversation can end in a comfortable silence, because nothing urgent is left undone. On the table, the ivory bead rested where I had set it, simple and small, a curve of pale against dark cloth. If you watched it too long, you might imagine it moved when a bus passed 3 streets away. But that would be the cloth, not the bead. It had done its work, and now it was a good stone again. The window pane held 5 or 6 beads of rain that did not quite agree to run down. They were content to sit and watch the city soften. Beyond the glass, a distant siren grew slow and went away. A bicycle bell rang far off and did not ring again. Somewhere a kettle boiled and someone poured from it. The sound came as a single syllable of comfort, and then it too was part of the room's hush. If you listen when the world is this quiet, you can sometimes hear the house itself settling, little ticks as wood remembers the rain. There is no danger in those ticks. They are the house telling itself that it is still holding together and can go on holding together while you sleep. Floors trust joists, shelves trust brackets, chairs trust the weight that they know. I breathed in through the nose and let the breath go in a steady line out of the mouth where a river finds the sea without hurrying, because it knows the way by heart. The air was cool and even. It made the body a comfortable place to be. Feet warmed, hands cooled, shoulders loosened and felt politely heavier. Penelope shifted again and gave that small sound that old dogs make when a dream lets go. Half sigh, half satisfaction. She was a soft, warm bundle by the hearth. If you have an animal nearby as you listen, you can borrow a page from her book, curl and let your spine tell you where it wants to rest. Blink slowly. The room is doing the watching. You can do the letting go. Somewhere under the city, and then only in memory, a bulb-shaped chamber kept being what it was made to be. Stone curved like a held breath. Water touched stone, and made a soft note even when no one asked it to sing. The pomegranate marks on those old walls sat with their quiet fruitfulness embossed in the tunnel's dusk where no hurried hand could rub them away. The quicklime slept unused because hands and tomes had been careful. That is a nice sentence to put to bed with. The quicklime slept unused. Night receded, but it receded gently. The edge between dark and light didn't need to be a sharp line. It can be a gradient that passes under you like a slow cloud, while you lie still and become heavier and kinder to yourself with every long, smooth breath. In for 4, pause for 2, out for 6. Let the exhale be the point of the story, because it is the part that tells every muscle in you that its work today is over. The bead's faint juniper hung in the air as a very thin thread. If you have a scent near you, paper smell of a book, the cotton of a pillowcase, the small lavender of a drawer, you can let it be your thread too. Scents do not pull, they guide. Follow one down and it will lay you gently on the floor at the bottom of your mind where nothing is required and everything is already fine. Beyond the window, a tree moved a little and then did knit. The city understood it was safe to be ordinary. You may understand the same. High stakes can stand guard for themselves now, humming under stone in a hill that outlasts all of us. You do not have to guard them with your eyes open. If thoughts come, nod to them and let them walk past like pedestrians on a sidewalk you are not planning to cross. If a worry insists, place it in a small coffer in your mind, close the lid, and set it in a chamber that hums a friendly note. It will still be there tomorrow, smaller for having slept. The room was warm, where it should be warm, and cool, where it should be cool. The chair was the exact size of a man who was finished. For now, the rain was the kind of rain that has no intention of waking anyone, and far below, a careful silence wrapped itself again around a line of law older than empires, preserved because people chose not to touch. Let your ears notice the quiet between sounds. Let your jaw slacken a fraction. Let your tongue rest easy where it feels most at home. Let the breath pool at the bottom of your ribs and then slide out. If your eyelids have not fallen on their own, consider that they might enjoy resting. Good. That's it. Your work is over. The mystery is solved. The word is sealed. The city breathes, and you are safe to sleep. Good night.